The dungeon beneath St. Agatha's orphanage smelled of rot and rust, a scent so permanent it had become the girl's second skin. 11 years old, though she looked 8 from starvation, she crouched in the corner where the stone walls met like broken ribs. Her name was Marin, though no one had spoken it aloud in 3 years. The rats came at dusk, fat gray bodies with pink tails, bold from generations of dungeon rule. They brought scraps from the kitchen above, bread crusts gone green, chicken bones still slick with grease, apple cores browning at the edges. Marin had learned their schedule. She knew which corner they entered from, which ones fought over territory, which ones tolerated her presence. She ate what they left, sometimes what they didn't. The nuns said she was possessed. That's why they'd locked her down here after she screamed during Mass, after she'd clawed at Sister Matilda's face when the woman tried to scrub her too hard during bath time. Demon child, they whispered. Better she starve than poison the others. But Marin wasn't possessed. She was simply unwanted, and the unwanted learned to survive on things the world threw away. Tonight, the rats brought something different. A dead sparrow, neck broken, still warm. Marin's hands trembled as she reached for it. Feathers stuck to her cracked lips. She closed her eyes and bit down, tasting copper and sky and the last heartbeat of something that had known flight. She didn't hear him enter. You eat like something that's forgotten it was ever human. The voice was silk pulled over iron. Marin's eyes snapped open. A man stood at the dungeon entrance, tall, dressed in black that seemed to drink the torchlight, with eyes the color of old silver coins. He didn't move like the nuns moved, all righteous hurry and punishing hands. He moved like water, like smoke, like something that had learned patience across centuries. "Who are you?" her voice cracked from disuse. "Someone who understands hunger." He stepped closer, and the rats scattered, not in fear, but in deference. "My name is Cassian. I'm what your nuns would call a monster." He crouched before her, studying her face with an intensity that should have frightened her but didn't. "And you, little scavenger, are something far more dangerous than I am. I'm nothing." The words tasted true. "That's why they put me here." "No." His hand reached out, slowly, asking permission, and touched the hollow of her cheek. His fingers were cold but gentle. "You're someone who refused to die when the world demanded it. That makes you extraordinary." Marin flinched. Kindness was a language she'd forgotten how to speak. "Why are you here?" she whispered. Cassian's smile held no warmth, only recognition. "Because I heard you. 3 nights ago, when you stopped crying and started willing yourself to live. That kind of defiance. It calls to creatures like me." He withdrew his hand. "I came to see if you were worth saving. And you're still breathing, still fighting, still here." He stood, offering his hand. "That's answer enough." Marin stared at his outstretched palm. Behind him, torchlight painted shadows that seemed to move independently of his body. She should be afraid. The nuns had taught her that strangers were dangerous, that men were devils, that trust was a sin that led to suffering. But she'd already been suffering, for years. And this stranger with silver eyes had called her extraordinary. "If I take your hand," she said slowly, "what happens to me?" Cassian's expression shifted, something ancient and sad crossing his features. "You'll never be hungry again. You'll never be weak again. You'll never be disposable again." He paused. "But you'll also never be entirely human again." "I don't want to be human." The words came out fierce, feral. "Humans are the ones who locked me down here." "Then take my hand, Marin." Her name in his mouth sounded like a song, "and I'll teach you what it means to be something the world fears instead of discards." Her fingers, thin as bird bones, wrapped around his. The dungeon door swung open above. Sister Matilda's voice echoed down the stairs. "The child needs to be fed. Even demons require..." She stopped. The dungeon was empty except for scattered rat droppings and a dead sparrow, half-eaten, growing cold on the stone floor. The castle appeared through fog like a memory surfacing from deep water. Maren pressed against Cassian's chest as he carried her, not because she was tired, but because nothing in her 11 years had prepared her for the sensation of speed. They'd crossed miles in minutes, the forest blurring into watercolor strokes of green and shadow. "Welcome," Cassian said, setting her down before iron gates that opened without touch, to Thornfield Eternal. The name fit. Stone towers climbed toward a moonless sky, their peaks lost in cloud. Ivy strangled the walls in patterns that looked deliberate, almost runic. Windows glowed with amber light that didn't flicker like candles. It pulsed, like the castle itself was breathing. "You live here?" Maren's voice was small. "I exist here." Cassian walked forward, and she followed, her bare feet silent on cobblestones worn smooth by centuries. There's a difference. Inside, the castle sprawled in impossible directions, hallways bent at angles that hurt to look at. Staircases led both up and down simultaneously. The walls were lined with portraits, men and women in clothing from eras Maren didn't recognize, all of them watching with eyes that tracked movement. "They're not painted," she whispered, understanding without knowing how. No, Cassian didn't look at them. They're remembered. Everyone who ever lived here, everyone who ever chose here, leaves an echo. He stopped before a door carved with roses and thorns. "This will be your room, for now." The room beyond was larger than the entire orphanage dormitory. A bed with black silk sheets. A wardrobe filled with clothes in her size, though she'd told him nothing of her measurements. A window overlooking gardens where flowers bloomed silver in the darkness. And on a table beside the bed, a feast. Roasted chicken, skin crackling with juice. Fresh bread still steaming. Grapes so purple they looked black. Cheese that smelled of cream and age. And wine, deep red, almost black, in a crystal glass that caught the light like captured blood. Maren's stomach twisted violently. She'd forgotten what true hunger felt like, buried under the dull ache of starvation. Now it roared. "Eat," Cassian said quietly. "As much as you want. There are no nuns here to measure your portions or call you greedy." She fell on the food like an animal, tears streaming down her face, not bothering with utensils. Cassian watched without judgment, his expression unreadable. When she finally stopped, belly aching, hands sticky, mouth sore from chewing, she looked up at him with something like shame. "I'm sorry, Don't." His voice was sharp. "Never apologize for surviving." He handed her a cloth napkin. "The world tried to starve you into nothing. Reclaiming your hunger is an act of defiance." Maren wiped her mouth. "What happens now?" Cassian settled into a chair across from her, movements liquid and precise. "Now, I explain what you are, what you could be." He steepled his fingers. "You're human, breakable, mortal. You'll age, you'll sicken, you'll die. Probably badly, given how the world treats girls with your resilience." She said nothing, waiting. "But I can change that." He leaned forward. "I can give you strength that shatters iron, speed that outruns horses, senses that hear heartbeats through walls. You'll never hunger, never sicken, never be weak again." His silver eyes held hers. "You'll become what I am. Vampire, eternal, apex." What's the cost? Maren had learned young that everything came with a price. Blood. The word hung in the air like smoke. You'll need it, crave it, hunt for it. He didn't look away. "You'll watch everyone you might have loved grow old and die while you remain. You'll be feared, hunted, alone, unless you find others like us." "I'm already alone." "No." Cassian's expression softened. "Not anymore. If you choose this, you'll have me. You'll have this castle. You'll have a family of the eternal, others I've chosen across centuries, those who were also cast aside and decided to take instead of beg." Maren looked down at her hands, still stained with chicken grease and grape juice, hands that had fought rats for scraps, hands that had clawed at stone walls until the nails bled. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "when does it happen?" "Not tonight, not this week, not this year." Cassian stood. "You're a child, Maren. I won't steal your humanity before you've had a chance to know what you're surrendering." He moved toward the door. "You'll live here, grow here, learn here. And when you're old enough to understand what forever means, when you can choose with wisdom instead of desperation, then I'll ask again. And if I say no? If I decide I want to stay human?" He paused at the threshold, not turning. "Then I'll gift you enough wealth to live comfortably, and you'll leave with my blessing. But you'll leave alive, Maren. No one who comes to Thornfield Eternal leaves damaged." The door closed softly behind him. Maren sat in the vast room, surrounded by food and silk and safety, and for the first time in 3 years, she wept, not from pain, but from the overwhelming terror of hope. Outside her window, in the silver gardens, something howled. It sounded like a promise. 7 years passed like chapters in a book Maren read each night before sleep. She was 18 now, no longer the skeletal dungeon child, but something graceful and strange. Her hair fell black past her shoulders. Her eyes had taken on a peculiar quality, not quite silver like Cassian's, but gray like dawn seen through fog. She'd learned the castle's language, which hallways led to libraries older than nations, which towers housed other vampires, some sleeping through decades, others prowling the night with ancient hungers, which rooms held memories so thick you could taste them like copper on the tongue. And she'd learned from Cassian himself. He taught her history, not the sanitized versions from books, but the truth. That empires were built on blood, that every cathedral rose from bones, that humanity's greatest achievements were funded by its cruelest betrayals. He taught her philosophy, Descartes and Kant, Nietzsche and Beauvoir. They debated morality over wine that wasn't wine, arguing whether immortals had more responsibility or less than mortals, whether eternal life demanded eternal ethics or rendered all morality meaningless. He taught her to fight, not like soldiers fought, with honor and rules, but like survivors fought, dirty, efficient, with every intention of walking away while the opponent didn't. She learned to move in darkness, to strike from silence, to kill quickly when mercy demanded it. But mostly, he taught her to see herself. "You're not human anymore," he said one evening in the library, firelight painting his features bronze. "Even without transformation, you've become something else, something between." Maren looked up from her book, a first edition of Frankenstein, annotated in Mary Shelley's own hand. "What am I then?" "Someone who belongs to neither world." Dame Cassian set down his own book. "Too knowing for humanity, too mortal for immortality." He studied her with that intensity she'd grown to crave. "The question is, which world do you want?" She'd been expecting this conversation for months, dreading it, hungering for it. "I want—" She closed the book carefully. "I want to stop watching everyone I care about age while I stay frozen." There were others in the castle now. Marcus, a former Roman gladiator who'd been turned during Nero's reign, who taught her Latin and how to see patterns in chaos. Ilara, a Renaissance painter whose work hung in the Louvre under a dead man's name, who showed her how light could lie and truth could shine through darkness. Yuki, a Japanese samurai from the Edo period, who moved like water and struck like lightning. They were family, strange, eternal, blood-bound family, and she was aging while they remained. "You're afraid," Cassian observed. "Not cruel, just factual." "I'm terrified." Marin stood, pacing between bookshelves that reached toward vaulted ceilings. What if I choose eternity and regret it? What if I become different? What if the blood changes me into something I hate? It will change you. Cassian's honesty was blade sharp. Every transformed person loses something. Humanity isn't just biology, it's limitation. It's time. Without death's pressure, some people lose purpose, lose passion, become hollow. And you? She turned to face him. What did you lose? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, the ability to forget. His silver eyes held centuries. I remember everything, every face, every failure, every person I couldn't save. It's... He paused, searching for words. Heavy, Marin. Immortality is heavy. She moved closer, drawn by the rare vulnerability in his voice. Why did you choose it then? I didn't. The confession landed like a dropped glass. I was 17, dying of plague in a mass grave when my maker found me. She turned me without asking, said I was too promising to waste. His jaw tightened. I've spent 800 years trying to decide if I should hate her for that mercy or thank her. Marin reached out, slowly, giving him time to retreat, and took his cold hand. I'm sorry. Don't be. He looked at their joined hands, hers warm and alive, his frozen in eternal stasis. That violation taught me the most important lesson. Choice is sacred. That's why I've never forced this on anyone, why I waited 7 years to even offer it to you. I know. Her throat tightened. And that's why I trust you enough to say yes. Cassian's eyes snapped to hers. Marin, I choose eternity. The words came out steady, certain. Not because I'm running from death, but because I'm running toward life, real life, with people who see me, who chose me. She squeezed his hand. You saved me from that dungeon, Cassian. Let me save myself from the cage of time. He stood slowly, towering over her, his expression unreadable. If we do this, there's no reversal, no cure. You'll be vampire until the sun burns out or someone drives a stake through your heart. I know. You'll have to kill, repeatedly, forever. I know. You'll watch humanity evolve without you, wave after wave of mortals who'll never understand what you are. I know. Her voice rang with finality. I've spent my entire life being less than everyone else, less fed, less loved, less seen. Her eyes blazed. I'm ready to be more. Cassian's expression shifted. Pride mixed with sorrow, mixed with something that looked dangerously like love. Then we begin at midnight, he said quietly, and may whatever gods still listen forgive me for making you eternal. Marin smiled, small and fierce. I don't need their forgiveness. I have yours. Outside the library windows, stars wheeled in ancient patterns. The castle's heartbeat pulse grew stronger, as if Thornfield Eternal itself was preparing for what came next. In the dungeons far below, dungeons very different from St. Agatha's, lined with gold and magic instead of rust and rats, the ritual space waited. And now, I invite you to leave a trace of your presence in the comments. Tell us where in the world you're watching from, and the exact hour you hear this story. We wish to know how far these immortal confessions travel, and at what moments of the night they find you. The ritual chamber existed beneath the castle's deepest foundation, carved directly into the mountain's bone. Marin descended stone steps that spiraled down for what felt like miles, Cassian ahead of her, torch flame casting their shadows long and thin against ancient walls. Every vampire has their own turning method, he explained, voice echoing. Some drain and refill, some use magic and blood combined. Some make it violent, a kind of death rebirth through trauma. And yours. Marin's heart hammered. The last time it would beat this quickly, this humanly, forever. Mine is drowning. They reached the bottom. The chamber opened before them like a stone cathedral, ceiling lost in darkness, floor carved with symbols that predated written language. In the center, a pool of liquid that wasn't water, too dark, too thick. It moved with intention, ripples spreading outward from its heart. Not in water, but in blood. Ancient blood. First vampire blood, mixed with binding magic that links you to me, to this castle, to the eternal line. Marcus stood at the pool's edge, arms crossed, his gladiator's build still imposing after 2,000 years. Ilara waited beside him, Renaissance gown replaced with simple black robes. Yuki knelt in meditation nearby, katana across his lap, ready for something. "They're here as witnesses," Cassian said, answering her unspoken question. "And as anchors. Transformation can break minds. You'll need voices to call you back from the edge." Marin approached the pool. The blood inside whispered in languages she didn't know, but somehow felt. It smelled of iron and roses and burnt offerings, of battlefields and birthing rooms and last breaths. "How does it work?" Her voice remained steady. "You'll submerge yourself completely. Hold your breath as long as you can, and when you finally breathe, you'll inhale blood instead of air." Cassian moved beside her. "Your lungs will fill, you'll drown, die, and in that death, the blood will remake you, rewrite every cell, transform every organ. Your heart will stop, then restart differently, slower. Your blood will thicken, cool, take on properties that defy biology." "How long does it take?" "Minutes, hours. Time behaves strangely in transformation." He touched her shoulder gently. "You'll experience your entire life in reverse. Every memory, every pain, every joy flooding through you simultaneously. It will feel eternal, and when you surface..." His silver eyes held hers. "You'll surface changed." Marin looked at the others. Marcus nodded once, respect clear. Ilara smiled, sad and knowing. Yuki opened his eyes, met hers, and said simply, "Courage is not the absence of fear. It is fear transformed into action." She turned back to Cassian. "Will it hurt?" "Yes." He didn't lie to her. Never had. "Like nothing you've felt before, like being unmade and remade simultaneously. But pain ends, Marin. What comes after doesn't." She nodded slowly, began unlacing her dress. "Wait." Cassian's hand stopped hers. "Once you enter that pool, I can't help you. No one can. You'll have to survive the transformation alone. It's the only way the blood accepts you." His jaw clenched. "If you have any doubt, any hesitation, tell me now." Marin looked at him. Truly looked. At the man who'd found her eating rats in a dungeon and called her extraordinary. Who'd given her 7 years of safety, education, family. Who'd waited until she was old enough to choose. Never pressuring, never forcing. Who'd taught her that mercy was the greatest strength. "No doubt," she said firmly, "only gratitude." She finished unlacing her dress, let it pool at her feet, stood in thin undergarments before the witnesses who didn't judge. Cassian handed her a white robe, which she wrapped around herself. Burial clothes, she realized. Symbolic death before literal rebirth. "Any last words?" Marcus called out, voice echoing. Marin smiled. "See you on the other side." She walked to the pool's edge. The blood rippled in greeting. She could feel its awareness, ancient and patient and hungry for transformation. Cassian spoke from behind her, voice thick with emotion. "Marin of St. Agatha's dungeon, who survived on scraps and rats, and will alone, I, Cassian Thornfield. Alpha of this bloodline, witness your choice. May your death be swift and your rebirth be glorious." Marin stepped forward. The blood was warm, body temperature, as if the pool itself was alive. It clung to her skin like silk, like honey, like something that wanted her. She waded deeper, waist, chest, shoulders, 1 breath, 2, 3. Then she dove. The blood closed over her head like a fist. Immediately, her lungs screamed for air, but she held, counting seconds, fighting every instinct to surface. The blood pressed against her eyes, her ears, her mouth, seeking entrance. She could hear voices, not the ones above, but older ones, thousands of them, all the vampires who'd ever been born from this ancient pool, all speaking at once in a chorus of transformation. "Let go," they whispered. "Die so you can live." Her lungs burned, vision blurred, the need for air became agony, became everything. She opened her mouth and breathed blood. It rushed in, thick, hot, alive with power, filling her throat, her lungs, every cavity. She was drowning, actually drowning. Her body convulsed, fighting, dying, and then darkness. Not the darkness of sleep, but of ending. And in that ending, her life exploded before her. The dungeon. Sister Matilda's face twisted with disgust, rats watching with intelligent eyes, the taste of moldy bread, the sound of her own crying when she still had tears to cry. Further back, blurry memories of a mother's voice singing something soft, a father's hands lifting her high, warmth and safety that ended too soon. The orphanage. The lockbox where they kept problem children. The hunger, the endless gnawing, soul-destroying hunger. Then Cassian's hand extended, the castle appearing through fog. Food, real food, love disguised as education. Marcus teaching her to laugh, Ilara showing her beauty in shadows, Yuki demonstrating that stillness was strength, 7 years of becoming herself. And now, her heart stopped. The silence was absolute, no pulse, no breath, no life. For an eternal moment, Maren existed in the space between, not dead, not alive, not anything. Then her heart kicked. Once, slow, deliberate, thud, different, stronger, other, thud. Her lungs expelled blood and drew in. Nothing. She didn't need air anymore. Her body had transcended that requirement. Her eyes opened. The blood around her glowed, not with light, but with information. She could see every molecule, every cell, every particle of magic woven through it. She could hear Cassian's breathing above the surface, slow and measured. Marcus's heartbeat, strong after millennia. Alara's humming, barely audible. Yuki's meditation, a rhythm of intentional stillness. She could smell time itself, the age of the stone, the centuries in Cassian's blood, the youth in her own transforming cells. And she could feel everything. The castle's awareness, vast and ancient, welcoming her. The earth beneath, solid and eternal. The night above, infinite and patient. The blood around her, satisfied, mission complete. Maren rose from the pool. Blood cascaded off her in sheets, but her skin beneath was different, paler, luminous, as if lit from within by moonlight. Her eyes, when she caught her reflection in the pool's surface, had shifted from gray to silver. Pure vampire silver. Cassian stood at the edge, hand extended, just as he had 7 years ago in that dungeon. "Welcome," he said softly, "to eternity." Maren took his hand, her grip now matching his strength, and pulled herself from the blood. She stood before them, reborn, transformed, eternal. "How do you feel?" Alara asked, wonder in her voice. Maren opened her mouth to answer and realized she didn't have words. She felt vast, every sense amplified beyond comprehension. She could hear conversations in the castle above, smell flowers blooming in the garden, feel the rotation of the earth beneath her feet. "Alive," she finally whispered. "For the first time in my life, I feel alive." Marcus laughed, deep and approving. "That's how we all feel. Death gives us life. Beautiful paradox." Yuki rose, bowed formally. "You honor us with your choice, sister." Sister. The word landed like a benediction. Cassian wrapped a dry robe around her shoulders. She hadn't even felt cold, but appreciated the gesture. Come, your transformation is complete, but your education has just begun. There's much to learn about what you've become. As they ascended the spiral stairs, Marin looked back once at the pool. The blood had settled, still and dark, waiting for the next desperate soul who'd choose forever over nothing. She touched her chest, felt her new heart beating its slow, eternal rhythm. 7 years ago, she'd been dying in a dungeon, forgotten by the world. Tonight, she'd been reborn in blood, claimed by eternity. And she'd never been more certain of anything in her existence. 3 nights after transformation, Marin stood in the castle's armory, studying weapons that had ended centuries of lives. Swords from every era, daggers with handles worn smooth by generations of hands, crossbows, spears, axes, all meticulously maintained, all used. You won't need them, Cassian said from behind her. Your body is weapon enough now. She turned. He looked different to her vampire sight, not just handsome, but radiant with power. She could see the magic in his veins, the ancient blood that made him what he was, the sheer weight of 800 years pressing against his aura. Then why keep them? Tradition, memory, respect for what we were before we became this. He moved beside her, pulled down a simple dagger. And sometimes, killing from distance is kinder than killing up close. Her new stomach twisted, not with hunger yet, but with anticipation of what was coming. I need to feed soon, don't I? Yes. Cassian's honesty remained blade sharp. You've been sustained by the transformation blood, but that won't last. Within days, the hunger will begin. And when it does... His silver eyes met hers. It will be unlike anything you've experienced. Worse than starving in the dungeon? Different. That was lack. This will be need. Biological, magical, absolute. He replaced the dagger. The first feeding is crucial. It sets patterns. If you lose control, become savage, you risk establishing habits that last centuries. Marin's hands clenched. I won't lose control. Everyone says that. His voice held memory and sorrow. And most do anyway. The blood hunger is ancient, Marin, older than consciousness. It doesn't care about your dignity or ethics or self-control. It only cares about feeding. Then teach me. She stepped closer. Show me how to hunt without becoming a monster. Cassian studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Get dressed. We hunt tonight. The city was London, sprawling, industrial, Victorian in architecture but modern in corruption. Cassian led her through fog-thick streets, past gas lamps and gutters running with waste, past women in threadbare shawls and men stumbling drunk from taverns. We're selective, he explained quietly as they walked. We don't kill innocents. We don't prey on the vulnerable. We hunt predators. How do you know who's smell, hearing, magic? He stopped at a corner, gestured toward an alley. Close your eyes. Tell me what you sense. Marin obeyed. Immediately, the world exploded with information. Perfume, cheap and cloying. Sweat, sour with fear. Blood, racing with adrenaline. And underneath it all, malice. A dark, oily sensation that coated her tongue like rot. Her eyes snapped open. Someone's hurting someone else. Yes. Cassian's expression hardened. 3 men, 1 woman. They've cornered her behind the butcher shop. They've done this before. I can smell it on them. Old crimes layered like sediment. Marin's new instincts screamed to intervene. We stop them. We feed on them. Cassian's correction was gentle but firm. This is what we are, Marin. Apex predators who cull the herd's worst members. We don't play hero and walk away. We end threats permanently. Her stomach twisted again, but this time with something darker. Hunger. The first whisper of it, curling through her veins like smoke. How do I? Fast, clean, from behind. He moved toward the alley. Watch first, learn, Then I'll let you choose your target." They approached in silence, vampire quiet, shadow soft. The alley opened before them, 3 men, rough-clothed and cruel-eyed, surrounding a woman pressed against the wall, her dress torn, her face frozen in terror. "Please," she whispered, "I have children." "Shut up," one man growled, reaching for her. Cassian moved. One moment he was beside Marin. The next, he was behind the man, hand clamped over his mouth, teeth at his throat. The bite was surgical. Precise strike, 2 punctures, blood flowing in controlled pulses. The man's eyes went wide, then glassy, then empty. Cassian drank deep, maybe 20 seconds, then released him. The body crumpled. The other 2 men spun, shocked. "What the—" Cassian smiled, fangs red, eyes burning silver. "Run!" They did. Cassian looked at Marin, gestured toward the fleeing figures. "Choose." The hunger roared to life. Suddenly she could smell them. Their blood, hot and rushing, pumping with fear-spiked adrenaline. Could hear their heartbeats, rapid and irregular. Could taste them on the air. She moved without thinking. Speed was instinct now. She caught the nearest man before he'd made it 10 feet, slamming him against the alley wall, hand wrapped around his throat. He struggled, clawing at her arm, but she was strong now, impossibly strong, and his resistance was laughable. "Please," he choked. "Please don't." "Did she beg?" Marin's voice came out cold. "When you cornered her, did you listen?" His eyes widened with understanding, with recognition of justice. Marin struck. Her fangs, when had they extended, pierced his throat cleanly. Blood flooded her mouth, and the taste, oh gods, the taste. It was life itself, liquid fire and silk and power and everything. She could taste his memories in his blood, violence committed, women brutalized, conscience long abandoned. And beneath that, his vitality, his strength, his existence flowing into her. The hunger demanded more. She drank deeper, lost in sensation, drowning in blood and power and the sheer rightness of it. The man's struggles weakened, his heartbeat slowed, his hands on her shoulders, Cassian's voice firm. "Enough, Marin. He's almost gone." She pulled back, gasping, blood dripping from her chin. The man slumped in her grip, barely alive, breaths shallow. "Finish it or leave him," Cassian said quietly. "Never leave them suffering." Marin looked at the man's face, pale, terrified, dying. She'd done this, taken his life to sustain hers, and she didn't feel guilty. She felt fed. She twisted his neck, quick, clean, merciful, and let the body drop. The woman still stood against the wall, frozen in shock. Cassian approached her gently. "You're safe now. Go home to your children. Forget what you saw here." His voice carried magic, compulsion woven through words. 3 men attacked you. 3 men disappeared. You escaped. That's all you remember. The woman nodded slowly, eyes glazed, then fled. Marin stood in the alley, blood on her mouth, body thrumming with stolen life, staring at the corpse at her feet. "How do you feel?" Cassian asked. She expected to feel horror, guilt, remorse instead. Powerful. Alive. Right. She looked up at him. "Is that wrong? Should I feel worse?" "You killed a predator who would have killed others. You fed without losing control. You showed mercy at the end." Cassian's expression held pride. "No, Marin, you don't need to feel worse. You need to understand that this is what we are. Killers with ethics, monsters with mercy." She wiped blood from her chin, tasted it on her fingers, felt her body metabolizing it into strength. "I can live with that," she said quietly. "Good." Cassian gestured toward the alley's exit. "Because eternity is long, and you'll do this again. And again, and again." He paused. "The question isn't whether you can kill. It's whether you can kill justly for centuries without losing yourself." Marin looked one last time at the body. 3 men had entered this alley planning violence. 3 men had died for it. and one woman went home to her children. The mathematics of justice suddenly seemed very clear. "Then teach me," she said, turning to Cassian. "Teach me how to hunt forever without becoming the thing I'm hunting." Cassian smiled, sad, proud, ancient. "That, little scavenger, is exactly what I intend to do." They walked out of the alley together, leaving 3 bodies for the city to find, 3 mysteries for constables to puzzle over, 3 predators permanently removed from the world. And in Marin's chest, her new heart beat slow and strong, carrying blood that wasn't entirely hers anymore. But somehow, that felt right too. If this story has already captured you, leave a like. It helps the voices of those who chose eternity reach more hearts. 100 years later. Marin stood on Thornfield's highest tower, watching sunrise through specially treated glass that filtered UV rays. The sun no longer killed vampires of their bloodline. Cassian had solved that particular limitation 3 centuries ago, but it still hurt, like staring at heaven through barbed wire. Behind her, the castle sprawled, its architecture now an impossible fusion of medieval foundation and modern additions. Electric lights, running water, internet cables snaking through walls that remembered torchlight and candles. Below, in the gardens, other vampires gathered. The family had grown. 37 immortals now, all chosen by Cassian or his chosen, all former outcasts, abandoned ones, survivors who'd been given the choice she'd been given a century ago. She was no longer the newest. Brooding again? Marcus appeared beside her, moving with the silence of someone who'd practiced stealth for 2,000 years. "It's very dramatic, very vampire." Marin smiled despite herself. "I'm reflecting. Same thing." He leaned against the stone railing. "What's troubling you?" "Nothing. Everything." She gestured at the sunrise. "I've been immortal for a century, Marcus. I've seen empires fall, technologies invented, wars fought, and I still don't understand what I'm supposed to be. Vampire, obviously. Beyond that." She turned to face him. "Cassian saves people. You teach them. Alara creates art. Yuki maintains balance. Everyone has a purpose. What's mine?" Marcus studied her with ancient eyes. "You're asking the wrong question. Immortality doesn't grant purpose. It removes time pressure. You don't need to figure out what you're supposed to be. You have eternity to discover what you choose to be." "That's not helpful." "It's true." He crossed his arms. "You're what? 118 now? Still practically a child by our standards. Cassian didn't find his purpose until his 3rd century. Alara took 500 years. I'm 2,000 in and still figuring it out." Marin's throat tightened. I want to matter." "You do." The voice came from the doorway. Cassian, dressed in modern clothes but moving with medieval grace. "More than you know." Marcus nodded to them both and departed, leaving them alone on the tower. Cassian joined her at the railing. They stood in silence, watching light paint the sky in colors that had existed long before vampires and would exist long after. "I've been watching you," he said finally. "This past century, the way you hunt, the care you take choosing targets, the mercy you show at the end." He glanced at her. "You've become something remarkable. I've become a killer. You've become justice." His voice carried weight. "Do you know what most vampires do? They feed indiscriminately. Humans are food, nothing more. Even ethical ones like us struggle to maintain. Care." He paused. "But you've never killed someone who didn't deserve it, never lost control, never become casual about taking life. In a century. That's just basic decency." "No." Cassian turned to face her fully. "That's extraordinary discipline. That's someone who remembers what it felt like to be helpless and refuses to become the thing that made her helpless." His silver eyes held hers. You've become the vampire I hoped you'd be, Maren. And more. The words landed like absolution. Then why do I still feel empty? Cassian's expression shifted, something vulnerable crossing his ancient features. Because you're lonely. The truth of it stole her breath. I have you, Marcus, Alara, Yuki, 37 family members. You have companions, mentors, family. He stepped closer. But you don't have what humans call love, the romantic kind, the kind that makes eternity feel less vast. Maren's dead heart clenched. I didn't think vampires felt that way. We feel everything more intensely than humans, including love. His hand reached out, touched her cheek gently. I've felt it for you since the moment you took my hand in that dungeon. The world stopped. What? Not then? Not that way? You were a child. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But I've watched you grow from that skeletal girl into this remarkable woman, this ethical killer, this merciful monster. His voice dropped to a whisper. And somewhere between teaching you philosophy and watching you hunt with justice, I fell in love with you. Maren stared at him, mind racing. Every conversation they'd had, every hunt they'd shared, every moment he'd touched her shoulder in passing, guided her through transformation, praised her restraint. All of it suddenly reframed. How long? Her voice came out barely audible. 15 years ago, you saved that child from the trafficking ring. You could have just killed the captors and left, but you stayed, made sure she got to safety, checked on her for months afterward. His expression held wonder. That's when I knew. You weren't just surviving eternity, you were thriving in it. And I wanted. He stopped, started again. I wanted to thrive with you. 100 years of companionship suddenly clicked into place. The way he always positioned himself near her, the pride in his voice when she succeeded, the sorrow when she hurt, the careful, respectful distance he'd maintained while she grew into herself. He'd loved her quietly, patiently, without pressure, just like everything else he'd taught her. Cassian, you don't need to respond. He lowered his hand. I'm not confessing to demand reciprocation. I'm confessing because keeping it hidden was becoming its own kind of death, and we're supposed to be immortal. A bitter smile. Ironic, isn't it? 800 years old and still afraid of rejection. Maren reached out, caught his hand before he could retreat. Ask me what I've been reflecting on. Up here. Every sunrise. He went still. Ask me, she repeated softly. What have you been reflecting on? You. The confession poured out. How you've never touched me without permission. How you waited 7 years to offer transformation. How you taught me to hunt ethically instead of just efficiently. How you... Her voice cracked. How you saw a starving child in a dungeon and called her extraordinary. Cassian's breath caught, unnecessary for vampires, but old habits persisted. I didn't know what love was, Maren continued. Not real love. I'd been abandoned, forgotten, treated like waste. Love was an abstract concept. She stepped closer. But you taught me. Not through words, but through actions, through patience, through choice. Maren, I love you. 3 words, quiet as prayer. I think I have for decades. I didn't recognize it. Didn't think I deserved to feel it. For a long moment, Cassian just stared at her. 8 centuries of life, and he looked stunned. Then he moved. His hands cupped her face, gentle despite their strength, and he kissed her like someone drowning finally finding air. She kissed back, tasting centuries in his mouth, feeling eternity in his touch, understanding finally what it meant to be chosen, not just for immortality, but for love. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unnecessarily, foreheads pressed together, Cassian laughed, soft, disbelieving, young despite his age. A century, he murmured. I waited a century to tell you. And I was too blind to see. Marin's hands found his, intertwined their fingers. But we have forever now, to make up for lost time. Forever? He echoed, then pulled back slightly, expression turning serious. But you need to understand what this means. Loving me, truly loving me. I already understand. You're damaged, guilty, haunted by 800 years of mistakes. I'll never be easy to love, he interrupted. I carry every death I've caused, every failure, every... So do I. Her voice rang clear. I carry the girl who ate rats, the woman who kills predators, the vampire who still remembers what it felt like to be helpless. She squeezed his hands. We're both monsters trying to be merciful, Cassian. That's what makes us work. He stared at her, then laughed again, this time with something like relief. When did you become the wise one? You taught me. She smiled. Everything I am, you helped create. The least I can do is love you for it. They stood together on the tower as sunrise painted the world gold and crimson. Two immortals who'd found each other across century and transformation, holding hands like the simple miracle it was. Below, in the castle, their family gathered for another night's preparation. Above, stars faded as daylight claimed the sky. And between them, love, eternal and unexpected, forged from mercy in a dungeon 100 years ago. So what now? Marin asked quietly. Cassian pulled her close, kissed her forehead. Now we live. Together. Forever. He paused. And maybe figure out your purpose. Because loving me is wonderful, but you still need something yours. Marin leaned into his chest, felt his slow heartbeat against her cheek, smiled. I'll find it, she said. I have time. All the time in the world, he agreed. And for the first time in a century, the emptiness she'd felt transformed into something warmer. Belonging. Comment eternal, if you believe love becomes sacred when it's chosen across centuries instead of dictated by time. 50 years later. The attack came at midnight, when even vampires grew comfortable. Hunters, not the amateur kind with crosses and holy water, but professionals, military-trained, magic-enhanced, armed with weapons that actually worked against immortals. Marin woke to screaming. She and Cassian moved as one, decades of partnership making them fluid. They burst from their chamber into chaos. UV grenades exploding like miniature suns, silver bullets punching through ancient flesh, fire spreading through corridors that hadn't burned in centuries. How many? Cassian's voice cut through panic. 15, maybe 20. Marcus appeared from smoke, arm burned, healing slowly. Coordinated assault. They hit simultaneously at 3 entry points. The fledglings, Ilara's evacuating them through the catacombs. Yuki materialized, katana red with blood that wasn't his. But they've blocked the main exits. We're trapped. Marin's mind raced. 150 years of existence, and this was the closest she'd come to true death, not from age or time, but from extermination. Why now? She demanded. We've been careful, ethical, we only hunt... Doesn't matter to them. Cassian's face was grim. We're monsters, that's enough. An explosion rocked the east wing. Stone groaned. Fire roared. We can't fight them all, Marcus said flatly. Not without casualties. Then we don't fight them. Marin surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. We talk to them. Cassian stared. They're here to kill us. They're here because they're afraid. She grabbed his arm. Because they don't understand what we are. What we've chosen to be. Her eyes blazed silver. Let me try. Marin. You gave me mercy when I deserved none. Let me offer the same. For a heartbeat, Cassian looked torn, then nodded. 5 minutes. If it doesn't work, we fight. Marin moved through smoke and chaos, finding the central hall where hunters had breached. 20 of them, armored, armed, advancing with military precision. At their head, a woman, mid-40s, scarred, with eyes that held absolute conviction. "Stop!" Marin called out, hands raised, unarmed. The hunters halted, weapons trained on her. The lead woman narrowed her eyes. "Negotiating?" "Explaining." Marin walked forward slowly, stopping 10 feet away. "You think we're monsters? I understand. We drink blood. We kill. We're technically dead." She kept her voice steady. "But do you know who we kill? Humans. Predators." The correction was sharp. Rapists, murderers, human traffickers, the kind of people your system fails to stop. She gestured around. "This castle houses 37 vampires. We've existed for centuries. If we wanted to slaughter indiscriminately, London would be a graveyard. You expect us to believe you're… what? Vigilantes?" "I expect you to look at evidence." Marin's voice hardened. "Every person we've killed in the past century, and we keep records, was a documented predator. Check your own case files. Check unsolved murders, missing persons, crimes that stopped suddenly. You'll find patterns." The woman hesitated. "Why would you?" "Because we remember what it felt like to be prey." Marin's hands lowered. "I was 11 when I became vampire, starving, forgotten, locked in a dungeon to die." She met the woman's eyes. "The man who saved me taught me that power without ethics makes you the monster. So we hunt monsters. It's penance, purpose, justice." Pretty speech. But the woman's conviction wavered. "Doesn't change what you are." "No." Cassian appeared beside Marin, moving from shadow. "But it should change how you categorize us." He stood tall, unafraid despite 20 weapons aimed at his heart. "I'm Cassian Thornfield, 800 years old. I could kill every one of you before you pulled a trigger. But I won't, because unlike what you've been taught, we value human life." The hunters shifted, uncertain. "Prove it," the woman demanded. "Prove you only kill predators." "Alara!" A young vampire stumbled from smoke, 17, transformed only 5 years ago. "The fire's spreading to…" A hunter fired. Silver bullet, center mass. The girl crumpled with a scream. Time stopped. Marin felt Cassian's rage like a physical force. Felt Marcus preparing to attack. Felt the entire castle's inhabitants poised for massacre. "No." Her voice cut through the moment. She moved to the fallen girl, cradled her head. The wound was bad, silver slowed healing, but not fatal. Yet. "You just shot a child." The hunter who'd fired looked sick. "She was attacking…" "She was warning us about fire that could kill humans in the lower cells." Marin's voice shook. "We have prisoners down there, rapists, murderers, people we captured for you to prosecute. But fire doesn't discriminate." The lead woman's face went white. "You're lying." "We're not." Alara emerged, covered in soot. 7 prisoners, documented criminals. We were holding them until we could anonymously tip authorities. She glared at the hunters. "But if you've started a fire…" The woman made a decision. "Kovac, Davis, check the lower levels, now." 2 hunters broke off, descended. Tension stretched like wire. Then a shout. "She's right. 7 cells, all occupied, fire spreading fast." The woman's weapon lowered fractionally. "Why? Why capture instead of kill?" "Because killing is easy." Cassian's voice carried centuries. "Justice is hard. We're trying to be better than our nature." He gestured at the wounded girl. "Unlike some." The woman stared at them, at the burning castle, at her own troops, uncertain now, at the vampire child bleeding silver-tainted blood. "Stand down," she said finally. "Ma'am, stand down." She looked at Cassian. "Help us save those prisoners. Then we talk." What followed was surreal. Vampires and hunters working together to extinguish flames, evacuate cells, secure criminals. Marin carried 2 prisoners out personally, both of them recoiling from her touch but accepting rescue. By dawn, the fire was controlled, the prisoners secured, and 20 hunters stood in Thornfield's great hall, surrounded by vampires who hadn't killed them. "You kept your word," the woman said quietly. She'd introduced herself as Captain Helena Frost, NATO Supernatural Response Unit. "That's unexpected." "We keep all our words." Cassian's voice was tired. "That's what separates us from the monsters you actually should be hunting." Frost looked around at the damaged castle, the wounded vampires, the evidence of their century-spanning ethical hunting. "I need proof. Everything. Records, patterns, evidence. You'll have it." Marin stepped forward, "on one condition." "Which is? You stop hunting us and start working with us." She gestured to her family. "We have resources, information, capabilities you don't. We can find predators you can't reach, stop crimes you can't prevent. But we need—" She paused, choosing words carefully. "And we need recognition, not as monsters, but as allies." Frost was silent for a long moment, then extended her hand. "I can't promise anything, but I can take this to my superiors. See if there's precedent for cooperation." Cassian looked at the offered hand. 800 years of hiding, of being hunted, of existing in shadows. He shook it. "Then let's begin," he said. 6 months later, the Thornfield Accords were signed. First formal recognition of ethical vampire covens as supernatural law enforcement partners. Other covens, seeing the benefits, followed suit. Within a decade, human-vampire cooperation became standard in 20 countries. It started with mercy in a dungeon. It grew through justice in alleys. And it changed the world when monsters chose to be better than their nature demanded. Present day, 200 years after transformation. Marin stood in the very dungeon where Cassian had found her, now renovated into a memorial chamber. Photographs lined the walls. Every person she'd saved in 2 centuries. Hundreds of faces. Thousands of prevented tragedies. "You come here often," Cassian observed from the doorway. "I need to remember." She touched a photograph. Young girl, 16, rescued from trafficking. Now 40 with children of her own. "Remember why we do this." "Do you ever regret it?" He moved beside her. "Choosing eternity?" "Every day." The honesty surprised them both. "And never." She turned to face him. "I'm tired, Cassian. 200 years of hunting, killing, saving, it's—" She searched for words. "Heavy, like you said it would be." His expression cracked with sorrow. "I know. But I'm also grateful for every moment, every century, every person we've helped." She took his hand. "For you, for us, for the family we've built." "Then what's troubling you?" Marin looked around the memorial chamber. "I've been thinking about Sarah." Sarah. A vampire from their coven, transformed in the 1600s, who'd walked into sunlight 5 years ago. Not from despair, but from completion. She'd lived 400 years, accomplished everything she'd wanted, and chosen to end on her own terms. "You're not thinking about—" "No." Marin squeezed his hand. "I'm thinking about choice. About how we give everyone else the choice to live or die, but we immortals just continue. Forever, without considering if we should." Cassian's face went still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to live, fully, completely, with intention." She pulled him close. "But I also want to know that if I ever feel done, if I ever complete my purpose and want to rest, that's okay. That choosing death after immortality isn't failure." "It's not," he whispered. "It's the ultimate act of autonomy." They stood in silence, holding each other in the room where her human life ended and immortal life began, surrounded by evidence of 2 centuries of choosing mercy over monstrosity. "I'm not done yet," Marin said finally. "I have too much left to do. Too many people to save. Too many years with you. She pulled back, smiled through tears. But someday, maybe a century from now, maybe a millennium, when I've lived fully and loved completely and made the difference I want to make. You'll choose your own ending, Cassian finished. And I'll honor that choice, even if it destroys me. It won't destroy you. Her voice carried certainty. Because you'll understand. That's what love means, letting go when the time comes. Even if the time is centuries away? Especially then. She kissed him gently. We're immortal, Cassian. But that doesn't mean we have to be eternal. It just means we get to choose when eternity ends. He held her close, this woman who'd been a starving child, who'd become his student, his partner, his love, who'd transformed from victim to victor, from helpless to powerful, from mortal to eternal, and who understood that even immortality should be a choice, not a prison. Then let's make a pact, he whispered. When either of us is done, truly done, we tell the other. No shame, no guilt, just honesty. And the other lets go, Marin agreed, with love, with gratitude, with blessing. Deal. He kissed her forehead. But you're stuck with me for at least another 1,000 years. I'm very needy. She laughed, the sound echoing off dungeon walls that remembered screaming but now held only love. I can live with that. They left the memorial chamber together, walking into a castle that hummed with life, undead life perhaps, but life nonetheless. 37 immortals who'd chosen mercy. Hundreds of humans they'd saved, thousands more they'd protect. And 2 vampires who understood that the greatest gift of eternity was the freedom to eventually, when the time was right, choose its end. That was mercy. That was love. That was what it meant to be human, even after death. 500 years later. The world had changed beyond recognition. Cities stretched into sky, technology bordered on magic, humanity had reached the stars, and vampires, ethical ones at least, had become integrated into society, their existence public, their contributions recognized. The Thornfield Coven was legendary. 700 immortals now, spread across continents, all chosen for their ethical potential, all trained in mercy and justice. They worked with human governments, supernatural councils, even AI entities that had achieved consciousness. They were mediators, protectors, bridges between species. And at the center, Cassian and Marin. They stood on Mars, yes, Mars, at a colony established by human-vampire cooperation, watching Earth rise over red horizon. Both looked exactly as they had centuries ago, unchanged by time, touched only by experience. 700 years, Marin said softly, since you found me in that dungeon. Best decision I ever made. Cassian pulled her close. Even considering I'm currently standing on Mars discussing philosophy. That's weird. She laughed. Everything's weird. That's the point. She leaned into him. Remember when we were afraid? When hunters attacked and we thought we'd die? Now we have hunters protecting us. Times change. We changed them. Her voice held quiet pride. We proved monsters could choose differently, could be better, and the world listened. You proved it. Cassian kissed her temple. I just facilitated. We did it together. She turned in his arms, like everything else. Below them, the Mars colony sprawled, human and vampire working side by side, building something unprecedented. A future where blood drinkers and blood makers coexisted not in fear, but in partnership. Do you ever wonder, Marin asked, what that girl in the dungeon would think if she could see this? I think she'd be amazed. Cassian's expression softened. She was eating rats. Now she's literally on another planet, helping humanity expand into the cosmos. That's... He trailed off. Extraordinary, Marin finished. using his word from 700 years ago. Yes, his voice thickened. You've always been extraordinary. They stood in comfortable silence, two immortals who'd loved each other across centuries, who'd built family from outcasts, who'd transformed predatory nature into protective purpose. Are you done? Cassian asked suddenly. Completed? Ready to? Rest? Marin considered. 700 years of existence, thousands saved. A world changed, love found and maintained across centuries, purpose discovered and fulfilled. No, she said finally, not even close. She grinned. Mars is just the beginning. There are other planets, other species, other chances to prove that mercy matters more than nature. So, we keep going? We keep going. She kissed him deeply. Together, forever, or at least until the universe runs out of people who need saving. That might take a while. Good thing we're immortal. Cassian laughed, the sound carrying across alien landscape, mixing with thin atmosphere, broadcasting joy into cosmos. I love you, Marin of St. Agatha's dungeon, Marin of Thornfield Eternal, Marin of Mars and beyond. I love you, Cassian, who chose mercy over hunger. She touched his face gently. Thank you for saying, I'll feed you forever, and meaning it. Thank you for believing me. They kissed under alien sky, surrounded by the future they'd helped create. Living proof that immortality wasn't curse or blessing. It was choice. Choice to love. Choice to save. Choice to be better than biology demanded. And somewhere, in the quantum foam of space-time, in the memory of a dungeon in Victorian London, in the blood-soaked pool of Thornfield's ritual chamber, in every alley where predators died and innocents lived, their story echoed. The orphan who fed rats, the vampire who offered forever, the love that chose mercy over monstrosity. The family built from the abandoned, the world changed by those who refused to be what they were born to be. 700 years and counting, forever and grateful, eternal and chosen. Subscribe if you believe mercy can resurrect even the damned, and follow for more confessions from those who chose immortality not to escape death, but to embrace life so fully that one lifetime could never contain it. Comment where in the world you're reading from, and whether you choose eternity for love that sees your soul. Blood and mercy, where monsters become saviors, and forever is earned through choosing mercy over hunger, century after century after century.